Look at the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now. I mean, seriously, just take a second and think about it.
Right. It's just a normal part of everyday life.
Exactly. You use it to order food, text your family, maybe scroll through memes. But in the context of modern global conflict, that device is the newest, most active trench in an expanding war.
Yeah, you really have to forget the muddy fields, the barbed wire, or, tanks rolling across a physical border.
Because the front line of espionage and sabotage has moved directly into our daily digital lives.
It is the absolute definition of a battlefield without borders.
Yeah.
The architecture of conflict has completely bypassed the physical map.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to decode how modern warfare has radically evolved. We're looking at how it went from conventional battlefields to this bizarre, highly decentralized digital gig economy of espionage.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. We are looking at a comprehensive video report from the Kyiv Independent. It's titled, How Russia Recruits Spies Through Social Media Ukraine this week.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating look at this new reality.
We're going to explore how ordinary civilians are being weaponized, without ever leaving their hometowns, and what this invisible front line means for the security of the infrastructure you drive past every single day.
Right. The stuff you don't even notice.
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this, because this source completely shatters everything pop culture has taught us about the intelligence world.
Oh, absolutely. You have to just throw out every single image of a Cold War spy you have.
Right, like James Bond or whatever.
Yeah, no trench coats, no dead drops under a street lamp, and definitely not the intelligence officer spending years cultivating an ideological asset deep inside some government agency.
That era is just over.
I mean, largely, yes.
Yeah.
That era of bespoke, highly intricate spy networks is being replaced by something far more, disposable.
Which is terrifying, because the report makes it incredibly clear that the people carrying out these covert operations across Europe today, they are not trained operatives.
No, not at all.
They are university students, they're delivery drivers, they are literally just people scrolling the internet late at night looking to make a quick buck.
Yeah, everyday people.
And we are not talking about low-stakes tasks here. The source details them, photographing sensitive military logistics sites, physically sabotaging railways, starting fires at warehouses.
And aiding in cybercrimes against the defense sectors of foreign nations. It's serious stuff.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism that makes all of this possible. We are talking about the concept of hybrid warfare.
Right. Fueled by a completely anonymized tech stack.
Exactly. If an intelligence agency wants to recruit an asset today, they don't need a face-to-face meeting. They don't even need to be in the same country.
No, they rely on encrypted messaging apps, specifically Telegram, which offers disappearing messages and massive public channels.
And then, crucially, there's the compensation piece.
Yes, the money,
Eh.
which is always the tricky part in espionage.
Right, because if an intelligence agency just, wires money to a teenager in France, the global banking system's anti-money laundering protocols,
AML flags, yeah.
those are going to trip immediately. Bank accounts get frozen.
Precisely the issue, which is why the financial transaction is routed entirely through cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin.
So there's no bank involved at all?
None. The recruiter and the recruit never meet. They don't know each other's names. The payment is verified on a blockchain, transferred to an anonymous wallet, and the gig is done.
It completely circumvents international financial surveillance.
It really does. It's a closed loop.
It honestly sounds exactly like a dark web version of TaskRabbit or Uber.
Yes, that is a perfect way to describe it.
Like, it's a decentralized gig economy, but just applied to treason and espionage. Someone posts a task, a random civilian accepts it, does the job, gets paid in crypto, and then they are instantly discarded.
Because there's zero loyalty.
Right, no ideological alignment required, and absolutely no long-term relationship. It's purely transactional.
And this gig economy model, it really blurs a critical legal and ethical boundary in international conflict.
How so?
Well, think about it. When a uniformed soldier strikes a fuel depot, that is a recognized military operation by a lawful combatant, right?
Yeah, that's just conventional war.
Exactly. But when a civilian is hired via an app to burn down a warehouse in a NATO country on behalf of a foreign power,
The legal framework gets very murky.
extremely murky. A massive mistake European governments have been making is initially treating these acts as isolated local crimes.
Oh, like treating a coordinated attack as just a random act of teenage vandalism.
Yes, a fire at a shopping center or a A damaged railway switch gets logged by local police as arson or trespassing.
Because it just looks like local crime.
Right. But the realization setting in now is that these are not isolated local crimes. This is an entirely new front of a war, extending thousands of miles beyond actual combat zones.
I read about this in the source, but I am genuinely struggling to wrap my head around the logistics of how they actually find these people.
It's a numbers game, really.
But if you are running a shadow gig economy, how do you actively recruit civilians without getting immediately caught by local cyber police? The report uses this term, trash fishing.
Trash fishing, yeah.
I need you to explain how that actually functions on a technical level. Are they just blindly DMing millions of people?
Well, that term, trash fishing, was coined by Indrek Kanik from Estonia's International Center for Defense and Security, and it perfectly captures the brutal efficiency of this method.
Okay.
They aren't blindly messaging everyone. They are exploiting the architecture of platforms like Telegram.
Because Telegram is, well, famously lax when it comes to moderating geopolitical content.
Exactly. Meaning there are massive public groups with hundreds of thousands of users just openly discussing the war.
So they have a built-in audience of people who might already be sympathetic.
Right, but they don't read through it manually. They automate the search. Russian intelligence agents deploy automated bots with innocuous-sounding names like Privyet or Hello Bot.
Just friendly little bots.
Yeah, and these algorithms scrape these unmoderated channels, specifically looking for users who are liking, sharing, or commenting on pro-Russian or anti-Ukrainian content.
So they wait for a user to raise their hand, basically.
Exactly. Once the algorithm flags a user who shows a specific sentiment, the bot mass messages them with a job offer.
But casting a net that wide, I mean, isn't that incredibly noisy? Most people would just block the bot or report it.
It is incredibly noisy.
Yeah.
But that is the grim genius of trash fishing. It relies on the terrifyingly low cost and zero liability for the intelligence agency.
Because they aren't risking any of their own agents.
Right. Kanik points out that you can cast this massive, cheap digital net to tens of thousands of people in a matter of seconds.
And it costs basically nothing.
Even if 99 out of 100 people ignore it, that one person who accepts might be the one who plants a bomb or cripples a supply chain.
Wow.
The physical damage and societal panic they cause are infinitely more valuable than the fractions of a penny it costs to run the algorithm. It is the ultimate asymmetrical numbers game.
And looking at who actually takes the bait, the demographic data in the Key Independent report is unsettling.
It really is.
They naturally target financially precarious individuals. They look at Russian-speaking migrants, which ironically includes some Ukrainian refugees who are just desperate for cash.
Yeah, people in really tough situations.
And they target low-level criminals who already operate outside the law. But the demographic that absolutely made my jaw drop was teenagers.
It is a profoundly disturbing statistic.
It really is.
Between 2022 and 2026, out of the more than 1,100 Ukrainians accused of pro-Russian sabotage, a reported 1 in 5 was under the age of 18.
1 in 5. That is wild.
And this is not just contained to Ukraine. Last year alone, 12 minors were arrested across Europe for Russia-related sabotage and spying incidents.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least explore the motivation here. Because I get needing cash. I remember being young and broke.
Sure, we all do.
But why would a seemingly normal teenager risk committing outright treason and facing decades in federal prison for, what, $100? It just doesn't compute.
That's a vital question. And the report dives into the underlying psychology of these recruits. We have to strip away the idea that these teenagers are politically radicalized.
So they don't actually care about the politics.
For them, it is almost entirely about the immediate financial reward. They have unregulated internet access, no stable income, and crucially, from a biological standpoint, they have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex.
Oh, right. That's the part of the brain that handles risk assessment and long-term planning.
It is. The prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until the mid-20s. It is responsible for understanding long-term consequences, impulse control, and weighing abstract risks against immediate rewards.
So an adult's brain works differently here.
Yeah. An adult might receive an anonymous message offering $100 to take a photo of a military warehouse and immediately spot the setup.
Right. They intuitively calculate the legal implications, the chance of arrest, the sheer physical danger.
Exactly. But a 16-year-old doesn't have the hardware to run that calculation.
They just see the cash.
You simply lack the adult capacity to project those long-term implications. To a teenager, walking down the street to take a picture of a building for $100 sounds like incredibly easy money.
Wow. So it's not ideological at all.
No. The recruiters aren't trying to indoctrinate these kids into a geopolitical cause. They are intentionally exploiting human biology.
That is so dark.
They are hacking the adolescent brain's inability to weigh long-term ruin against short-term crypto payouts.
That is horrifyingly pragmatic. They know a teenager just won't think 3 steps ahead to the trees in charge.
Exactly.
But this naturally shifts our focus from the micro, these individual teenagers getting tricked into taking photos, to the macro. What happens after they take the picture?
Right. What's the end game?
Because these intelligence agencies aren't just collecting random photos of European cities for the fun of it.
No. Every single task, no matter how small it seems, feeds directly into a much larger strategic objective.
And the scope of the targets outlined in the source is staggering.
It really is.
We are talking about undersea water cables, vital warehouses, civilian shopping centers, and even the personal cars of politicians.
And this shadow campaign is active across Poland, the Baltics, France, Germany, and even neutral countries like Ireland.
Right. And the source features insights from Keir Giles, an expert on Russia's military strategies, and he points out a very deliberate pattern.
Yeah, if you strip away the random noise,
The attacks that just look like chaotic, undirected vandalism.
you find a core focus on logistics, communications, and emergency support. They are targeting the exact arteries that keep a society functioning during a crisis.
And here's where we have to ask why those specific arteries matter. The commonly accepted narrative is that this is simply about deterring European governments from sending military aid to Ukraine.
Right, disrupt the supply lines, and the aid stops flowing.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because Giles suggests that this disruption isn't just about the current conflict at all, it's preparation.
Preparation for what comes next.
Exactly. I like to think of it like a hacker deliberately stress testing a massive corporate computer network, or an engineer intentionally cracking the support beams of a bridge.
That's a great way to put it.
They aren't trying to collapse the bridge today. They are doing it to see how long it takes the local authorities to notice the crack, mobilize a repair crew, and fix it.
That is a perfect analogy. The ultimate objective is to ensure that if Russia ever decides to launch a further conventional military attack into Europe, the continent's infrastructure will already be compromised.
Because NATO needs those systems.
Exactly. If NATO needs to rapidly move troops or armor across Europe, they rely on civilian railways, ports, and highways.
And if saboteurs have already mapped out and tested the vulnerabilities of those systems,
Then they can paralyze the continent's ability to reinforce itself before the first tank even rolls across a border.
but if this threat is so existential, why is the response so uneven? Because the source highlights a massive divide in how this hybrid war is perceived across Europe.
It really comes down to a geopolitical blindness born out of geography and history.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the frontline states, countries in the east, closest to Russia, like Poland or Estonia, they understand exactly what is at stake.
Right, they have historical memory and physical proximity.
So they're treating this with the utmost severity. They know this is preparation for potential conflict.
But the further west you go, the more relaxed everyone seems to be.
Because there's a psychological hangover from the end of the Cold War, many Western European countries falsely believe that physical distance insulates them.
They think they have a buffer.
Exactly. They think that because they have geographical buffer zones, other countries between them and the border, they are inherently safe.
Which is just not true anymore.
Not at all. They are completely ignoring the reality of long-range missiles, cyber capabilities, and the digital reach of telegram bots.
The internet doesn't care about borders.
Exactly. Kaja Kallas, an Estonian official, delivered a very stark warning while visiting Ireland, which is a militarily neutral country.
Right.
She made it explicitly clear that choosing neutrality does not exempt a nation from a hybrid target list.
Because an algorithm recruiting a teenager doesn't care about a country's official neutral status?
It doesn't care at all. It just looks for vulnerabilities.
Wait, I am struggling with this piece of the defense strategy. If we know that Telegram is the primary vector for recruiting these saboteurs right in our own backyards, why don't we just shut it down?
It's the logical next question.
How can cybersecurity experts argue that we just have to live with a platform that acts as a weapon of mass recruitment? That sounds like institutional suicide.
It does sound counterintuitive. But the report features cybersecurity expert Konstantin Korsun, who points out the ultimate paradox of freedom.
The paradox of freedom. Okay, explain that.
Democracies simply cannot entirely monitor, restrict, or ban platforms like Telegram without abandoning their core democratic principles regarding free speech and an open internet.
So to defeat the authoritarian threat, we would have to adopt authoritarian tactics.
Exact the dilemma. Corsoon notes that only authoritarian regimes like China have the legislative power and technical capability to completely ban Western social media
Right, they just lock down the whole internet.
and assert total draconian control over their domestic digital networks. If a European democracy does that, they destroy the very societal values they were trying to protect.
So we're just completely exposed on these digital platforms by design.
We are vulnerable by virtue of being free societies.
Wow.
And because this hybrid warfare deliberately exploits existing societal grievances using disaffected youths, disorganized crime, or financially desperate migrants, the only true defense is deeply complex.
It's not just a firewall.
No. It requires what experts call good governance. That means reducing financial inequality so people aren't desperate enough to take $100 for treason.
So fixing the root cause.
Yes. It means improving media literacy and building societal resilience from the ground up.
And defensively?
Defensively, it requires collective retaliation by alliances like NATO or the EU, because no single nation can deter this kind of decentralized shadow war alone.
Which perfectly bridges us to another fascinating layer of the source material. Because this isn't just about digital bots and local infrastructure.
It goes much further.
It directly ties into physical kinetic warfare and global supply chains. The report details a recent event where Ukraine blew up an Iranian cargo ship.
Right.
Now, at first glance, that seems completely disconnected from teenagers in Poland.
But it is intimately connected through the logic of logistics and supply chains. This is where the digital shadow war and the physical battlefield intersect.
Now, just to be clear to you listening, we are presenting the reporter's analysis of this military event, not endorsing any political stance. We are just looking at the strategic mechanics. So, Alex Su, a reporter for the Kyiv Independent, explains that on a practical level, this Iranian cargo ship was reportedly carrying military supplies, highly likely to be drone components destined for Russia.
Because Iran has been supplying Moscow in this conflict.
Right, so Ukraine striking the ship is a direct disruption of that physical supply chain.
They are hitting the hardware before it can be deployed. But the secondary motive outlined in the report is where the grand strategy comes into focus.
The diplomatic angle.
Yes, it was a calculated diplomatic signal. By successfully striking an Iranian asset, Ukrainian President Zelensky is attempting to demonstrate to Washington that Ukraine is a highly capable and valuable U.S. ally.
Right, and the reporter frames this specifically in the context of a potential Trump administration's historically strong stance against Iran.
It is a purely strategic diplomatic move. Ukraine is attempting to secure continued American support by aligning its own kinetic military actions with broader U.S. geopolitical interests regarding Iranian containment.
So what does this all mean? We have a situation where teenagers are getting paid in anonymous cryptocurrency to burn down rail switches in Germany.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the globe, cargo ships are getting blown up to sever drone supply lines and send diplomatic signals across the Atlantic. Are we just permanently stuck in this invisible, fully integrated global war?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are witnessing is the total, inseparable synthesis of modern conflict.
It's all one thing now.
Exactly. The physical destruction of that Iranian cargo ship carrying drone parts, and the digital recruitment of a 16-year-old on Telegram to photograph a NATO warehouse. They're just two sides of the exact same hybrid warfare coin.
You can't separate them anymore.
You really can no longer separate the digital from the physical, the local petty crime from the geopolitical strategy, or the supply chain from the front line. The battlefield is everywhere all at once.
And because of that, our traditional legacy methods of defense,
Standing armies, physical border walls, formal treaties.
they're simply no longer sufficient on their own.
It requires a total paradigm shift in how we view national and personal security.
To distill all of this down for you, the listener, the entire landscape of espionage has fundamentally transformed.
It's completely unrecognizable from 20 years ago.
It is no longer a hidden world of deep cover agents driven by ideology. It has become a cheap, disposable gig economy transaction fueled by cryptocurrency and social media algorithms.
Yeah, the targets aren't just secret, classified military bases anymore.
They are the everyday infrastructure that keeps your town running. And the ultimate goal isn't just winning a battle today, but mapping out vulnerabilities to paralyze Europe's ability to respond to the crises of tomorrow.
The vulnerability isn't merely structural. It's psychological, economic, and digital. The threat vectors are baked into the very platforms we use every day.
This isn't some distant spy novel unfolding in a classified bunker somewhere. This is happening right now in public chat rooms that you might casually scroll past on your morning commute.
It's right in front of us.
The logistics hub, the shopping center, or the railway in your own town could literally be on a digital hit list, accessible to anyone with a smartphone and a willingness to look the other way for $100.
Which is a sobering thought.
We asked you at the very beginning of this deep dive to look at the phone in your pocket and see it as the new frontline. I hope the mechanics of how this shadow war operates make it clear why that wasn't an exaggeration.
It leaves us with a critical, lingering question as we move deeper into this decentralized era.
What's that?
Well, as hybrid warfare becomes increasingly cheaper, more automated, and more reliant on anonymous gig workers scattered across the globe, how will societies in the future distinguish between a random local crime wave and a coordinated act of war?
Wow.
If the enemy is no longer a uniformed soldier crossing a border, but simply an algorithm paying a local teenager in Bitcoin to start a fire, does the very legal and international definition of a declaration of war need to be completely rewritten?
A heavy, complex question to mull over as you look at the apps on your phone today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the changing face of global conflict. Stay curious, stay informed, and we will catch you next time.